מכבדת אותנו בנוכחותה נשיאת בית המשפט העליון, כבוד השופטת מרים נאור. אני מזמינה אותה לשאת דברים.
Mr. President, Reuven and Rivlin, and as is the custom in this House, after mentioning the President, we say, all the distinguished people. I would like to congratulate this forum for devoting the subject to social solidarity in wake of the President's speech and to Israeli hope. The partnership between the various stripes of Israeli society is important and crucial to all. It should be advanced and strengthened in every possible arena. The legal system, too, plays a role in advancing Israeli partnership as the one that is in charge of the balance between the public and the individual and equality. Israeli society is based on both of these principles, the individual and the public, and neither can exist without the other. The individual is the freedom of the individual, human rights, the recognition that humans are free and can shape their lives and life story. Human dignity is the whole story standing on one leg. The public, and that is the public interest, that is the recognition that people do not live on an island but live in a society and in a state. Human dignity, rights, and dignity are expressed by the government by shared goals. Our image as a democratic society requires a balance between the individual and the public, between the duty and responsibility of the state to advance the rights of the individual and the responsibility of the individual to do his part for public welfare. The President said last year at the conference, the partnership means that each of us bears responsibility for all of Israeli society, and at the same time, partnership does not involve giving up the basic components of the individual. Partnership is based on the ability of each individual to write his own life story and on equality between all members of Israeli society. The need to guarantee equality is crucial to the Israeli consensus upon which our democracy is based. The individual finds his place in the social public and is part of building a shared society, knowing that the other individuals are doing the same. The Supreme Court insisted that equality is the life and soul of a democracy. It is a basic constitutional element and is a basic element of our legal system and is an inseparable part of it. There is inequality and discrimination, and these are described as a terrible evil that undermines the democracy and undermines its very foundations, leading to its destruction. Discrimination undermines social solidarity and is unacceptable. The courts are responsible for eradicating discrimination and inequality among citizens of the state. Anywhere there is discrimination, the courts must eradicate it. There are many examples, and in order not to carry on too long, I will only mention a few, and I will refrain from relating to a number of pending issues before the court, that are currently pending before the court. In one case, state lands were allocated to the Jewish Agency for the establishment of a community settlement for Jews. In that particular case, it was decided that the allocation of state land to Jews alone is forbidden discrimination, and consequently, the request of the Ka'adan couple to buy a plot in the community should be considered without the fact of their being Arabs being considered as a criterion for refusal. In another case, the court debated the matter of the separation of a girls' school in Emmanuel, which involved the division of the yard of the school with a barrier and separate entrances. These changes created a separation based on ethnic background between two groups of girl pupils, between those from an Ashkenazi background and those from a Sephardi background. The court decided that this was forbidden discrimination on an ethnic background. It made it clear that a policy of discrimination could not be allowed because a policy of separate but equal by its very nature is unequal. Another important aspect of the rulings on the matter of equality was the matter of proper representation in public jobs and also the allocation of public resources. And so in 1969, the court ordered the cancellation of a funding law because it discriminated against certain lists. And this involved the Knesset elections, and this is a very important principle in Article 4 of the Knesset, and they did not have the necessary majority to make such a change. In 2010, 40 years later, following a decade of court proceedings, the court ordered that yeshiva students, that the pensions paid to yeshiva students would not be included in the national budget for reasons of inequality. According to the explanation, a budget line that is included for married yeshiva students, that they would receive payments from because they did not have high enough income. But at the same time, other students who were studying religious studies were not entitled to the same payment. And the court repeated the principle that has always existed in our legal system, that in the allocation of budgets to a particular group in itself may not be wrong, but the support of the state must be done equally with clear criteria that are clearly egalitarian. And so it was decided that the relevant budget item could no longer remain. In 2012, after a prolonged legal discussion, it was decided that for reasons of equality, it was impossible to determine an arbitrary list of communities that were entitled to discounts in income tax without clear defining criteria being listed. I could go on and on with other examples. Equality is the life and soul of government, of fairness and justice in the most natural way. Against this feeling of discrimination on the part of individuals, that they are being treated unfairly, that impinges on the individual identity and on the forces of solidarity in society. Only by protecting both pillars of society, the individual and the public, can we continue to maintain a democratic society. The idea of the rule of the majority, of representative democracy, is crucial but is not sufficient. The rule of a majority that harms a minority, the minority, is not democratic. A government that indiscriminately harms individuals is not democratic. Democracy is not only the rule of the majority. There are many additional principles and values involved, led by the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the protection of individual freedoms. Maintaining the delicate balance between individual rights and public benefit is the work of the legal system. And in that way, the court makes its contribution to shaping the Israeli partnership, in which the individual knows that, unconnected to its individual identity, gender, or ethnic background, they will receive equality. The president spoke about the Israeli mosaic, about the need to create a joint Israeliness of cultural richness. We can do it. We can maintain the impressive achievements we've had so far, but it is dependent on our unity. I am not referring to conceptual unity. Our strength actually lies in our diversity, that we are different in our ideas, in our opinions and beliefs, and that's how it should be. Our strength lies in our conceptual pluralism, the legitimacy for debate and dispute. Those are the pillars of our national identity. One person can think one way and another way, and all legitimate views should be respected. Our unity must be in consensus on the rules of the game, in the consensus of the only state that we have. Unity in the recognition that we can live together only in a democratic framework that recognizes the shared value of human dignity, of humans that were created in God's image. It is based on tolerance and a constant balance between them. It is, of course, natural that disputes arise and that some of them find their way to the court. The court must decide by law in disputes that have been brought before it. We are not talking about a personal matter of our own, but rather of our role and our duty as judges. It is our responsibility to decide, and we have judicial independence to do so. The decision of the judge derives from the facts and from the law, and only from them. The judge may not be influenced by anyone. He must not diverge from the path of the law. He must be committed only to do justice by law. The judge decides not according to his own opinions and views, but rather based on his knowledge of the law, based on the infrastructure of the facts placed before him. It is wrong to categorize judges based on the sector that they come from and decide in advance how any particular judge will decide. It is impossible to predict what a ruling will be, and the nature of those, what decides are the arguments themselves. Judicial objectivity, unbiased, is crucial to the job of the judge. It is crucial to the existence of a democratic society and to maintain the principle of equality, that principle which must be safeguarded at all times.
Thank you very much to the last of the speakers of this session, Judge Miriam Naor, President of the Supreme Court of Israel, Chief Justice. I'd like to conclude with about Rabbi Schmelke from Nikolsburg. It's just a small anecdote, and he loved studying Torah, and he'd go up to the attic and he'd lock himself in and he'd sit down and just study, and he wouldn't eat or drink, just study Torah. And he'd have a little bowl of water beside the Gemara. In case he fell asleep, then his head would droop into the water and then he'd wake up quickly. But once once the candle went out, it was extinguished, and he thought, what am I going to do? Am I going to open the attic, and I'll have to go down, and I'll have to look for some way of lighting the candle and rekindle it? And he was sort of hesitating and vacillating what to do. Suddenly, a hand came from the street through into the attic and lit his candle for him. And he was delighted, and he immediately repeated, and he went back to study Torah. And then he suddenly understood that the person who had rekindled the candle was Elijah the prophet. And he understood that he'd been in the street and that he hadn't been studying Torah. Then the rabbi started bemoaning this fate and crying. In other words, to see Elijah, not actually envision Elijah. And my goodness, and I missed that kind of thing. So in other words, what is this trying to say? The desire to study Torah and to meet and to really see this vision, the Torah in the academe, the ivory tower, something hidden in the attic. That doesn't happen. After all, the redemption and everything else is in the street, like Rabbi Elijah. So I wish that all of you will enjoy the future, but please, the future discussions at the conference, and will know how to find the redemption and everything else in the street itself, and that this should be incumbent upon us to toil and work, because it is a tremendous challenge, and we shouldn't leave things in the ivory tower of the academe or any other remote place. But please, could you remain in your seats until the President of Israel leaves? And then we'll have a short break.